All right, so EV global sales are really going to be an interesting scenario here in 2021. There are so many different things that are happening that are going to affect the marketplace. My name is Paul Barron. This is TechPath. We're going to jump into that today and really break down kind of the current situation of where EV sales could go versus what we're seeing in total global sales of the automotive market. So let's kind of break down these things that we do here on the show. They're called market movers. And the idea behind these is to really kind of give you guys some insights on where some of the data and supporting trends are moving. And that's kind of the breakdown. One thing though to remember is we are not giving you stock advice here. We're just giving you something for entertainment and maybe our opinion on how things are going. Of course, we pour in a ton of research and we spend a lot of money on data in terms of being able to collect all this information and provide it to you guys, of course, at no charge. So let's kind of jump to it quickly. And this is Q1 could be a forward indicator for Tesla and kind of what's happening. Everybody's been doing videos on kind of Tesla's blowout of their Q1 deliveries, which was huge, I will admit, but it wasn't by that much. So for all the Tesla lovers, and I'm one of them, full disclosure, I own Tesla stock. I am a Tesla driver, but I'm also a Tesla skeptic. And that doesn't mean a bad skeptic. I'm just skeptical in the basic fundamentals of how the company can be able to achieve certain things. And I feel like you've got to be able to perform. And listen, they did it with Q1. When you look at their numbers here, Q1, S and X, this was something that blew me away. Fact that they produced obviously no vehicles in the new refreshed Model S and X and sold the remaining, basically remaining inventory of a little over 2,000 cars. So what that tells me is that, and this is something Elon's kind of alluded to, is that S and X are not in the long-term growth plans. I know a lot of you, for all of you that are going to be popping down in the comments below, don't hate me just yet. I do believe S and X are going to play into Tesla's future. And I think it has to, but it really is clear that the growth channels for Tesla are going to be in the Model 3, Model Y, the new compact Tesla, and of course the Cybertruck. But if you look at this 3 and Y for 2021 Q1, 182,000 deliveries. This is absolutely just unimaginable when you look at the overall marketplace and what they're being able to do. So at 184,000 vehicles for the quarter, this is 110% over the same quarter last year. And the previous quarter of Q4 obviously was 180,000 vehicles on delivery. And to me, when you look at Q4, that was really kind of the market that, because they were rushing and pushing, and also understand that Q4 and Q2 are the two biggest quarters in car sales every year. So you have the spring quarter, which is what we're in now, and you have the last quarter of the year that essentially dictate how well a car manufacturer does in the year. So for Tesla to outperform its best-selling quarter and some pent-up demand in last year, especially in 2020 with all the the issues that we had economically, I think this has been a very, very strong Q1, especially with chips, especially with the fact they didn't deliver X and S. There's a lot of good things to be looking at here. The other thing that I think is going to play into how EVs roll out is what's going to happen in full self-driving in Q2. Q2 is going to be a factor, I think, for Tesla. Either Elon is going to deliver on his promise, and that is a full self-driving suite out to the masses, including anyone that wants to put it on the subscription model. He says it's going to be there, and definitely, as you can see, Q2 for sure. And I think that's going to be a factor there. If you look at some more tweets here by Elon, it kind of shows availability varied by region. This is talking about their ramp up. So it does show kind of that they've put it in play. Here we are now in April, and we are now in Q2, Elon. That's what April is. It's Q2. So when the FSD button gets in there for your subscription at $199 a month, you'll be able to get that here. Special offer code, check the link below. Will be happening for Tesla, I'm sure of it. So we'll get next to where the forward indicator could be moving for Tesla, because this plays a big part in the overall global sales of EVs and where it's going. Let's jump to meeting expectations. We're going to jump to a slide here that says have to meet expectations to double. So if Tesla can double their numbers, and that's what a lot of analysts and Tesla bulls believe can happen, when you look at the breakdown of Q1 21, this is their actual numbers, the 184,800, and where we could be by the end of the year. So let's kind of break this down. First of all, we'll see a slow ramp up in Q2 for the S and X. That puts us at around 9,500, our estimate of 9,500 units. We'll look back on this at the end of Q1 and see how accurate we were. 225,000, we will see some accelerated lift in the Model Y. I think this is going to be something that we get past the chip shortage. We get back onto ramp ups and slower or faster than the 3-month delays that we've got on the Model 3 of being able to get that car. The Model Y is a little bit faster. We think that'll come in at 234. Q3, this is going to be a little bit interesting. There are a lot of factors that I think will drive the sales in Q3 to keep it at a pace of positive numbers at 268.5. And of course, in Q3, we will be on a ramp for Model S and Model X. Q4 is where I see kind of the sweetness coming together, and that's going to be the fact that we'll have Giga Berlin. Also, China will be in full steam. And obviously, Fremont's going to continue its continued growth. So I think that will help with the Model 3 and the Model Y on hitting the 316,000 estimated for, 290,000 estimated for Q4. That drops us in, if you look at the number, at 1 million cars. Now, when you look at 2021, this is kind of a comparison of what they did in the same quarter the previous year. So you can look here, and it's simply a doubling of the numbers. So this will be awarded big time in Tesla's stocks. I want you to stick around to the video because we're going to jump into Tesla's, what their potential future price is, and there's a lot of indicators on what's going to drive the stock price, and I've got a breakout on each of them. Before we do that, though, I want to jump into the industry. When you look at the comparative industry of EVs overall, this is retail sales change, and this right here is ICE vehicles. So when you look at where new car sales are going, this is massive. So think about this. I want to temper the fact that we saw great Q1 sales for Tesla with the same scenario that if you look at ICE vehicles, absolutely up, unbelievably, probably the biggest jump we've seen maybe in the last 10 years, obviously for obvious reasons. We know why, but for us to see that kind of movement there in March is pretty impressive in a 42% upswing in terms of overall car sales. Compared to an industry, let's look at the global auto sales expected. And when you look at this, they are expected to gain momentum next year, being this year, 2021, to 83.4 million vehicles. There are some things that are going on and happening here. If you look at this study right here, electrification remains in a growing demand. European market, which is the battery electric vehicle sales, have been significantly boosted by regulatory requirements despite the impacts of COVID. And we are seeing some very interesting performance there, including the fact that China has their dual credit policy in place. That will continue to move things on. Also, one to note, however, the IHS market forecasts predict BEV sales of nearly 14%, representing nearly 3.2 million passenger vehicles in China by 2025. That's a pretty big jump. And we'll go into China and some of the other key markets that are going to be there. In total, you'll see over volumes, China, Europe, and US expected to reach 2.45 million in 2021, or about 5.4%. This was based on the IHS market forecast. So all of this is great. I think the key here is going to be based on adoption. And adoption, to me, is going to be the key of being able to grow not only in 2021, but be able to get to a launch pad for 2022. Originally, my position was pretty strong for 2021. I'm tempered a bit only because I've seen, even though Tesla did over-deliver and over-index for Q1, but because I'm seeing slower pace in being able to get some of these additional vehicles to market, and that includes Lucid, Rivian, you name it, the vehicles just are starting to line up in terms of the reveals and the drops that all these manufacturers are doing, including VW, and the slow pace in which these cars are available. And I'll talk about that in a minute and why I think adoption rate could actually slow a little bit. Tesla may have to help drag the market along for another year in being able to get us to kind of that next level. So we're going to kind of break that down. So 2019 US EV sales decreased an estimated 7% to 9%. Here was the reasons why. When you look at them, overall, the decrease was around 6.8% from 349,000 units sold in 2018. The numbers, I think, again, were based on the fact that we did not see wide availability and the fact that we didn't have the additional vehicles in the space. Remember that EVs have to refill the market sectors in automotive sales. So if you think about the Model S, sure, it's a market sector in probably the Mercedes E-Class, the BMW 6 or 7 series. That's one classification. The Audi A6, maybe A8 would compare to the S. The X itself, a little bit of an unusual category, but it does go against the GLE, most likely from the Mercedes, and the BMW X5, maybe the X7 very lightly. So those are great class matchups. The Model 3 clearly going against the top-selling BMW 3 Series, the Mercedes the GLE, and the GLC. So you see the class filling for Tesla. The problem was there was no true mid-size crossover or basically a SUV, which became the Model Y. And that, to me, was the determining factor because that is going to be a huge seller and has proven to be so. The problem now we see is the adoption is going to continue to slow because we don't have the compact car and we don't have the pickup trucks on the ground. So I think that's going to be the big factor here. If you look at the category market share, and this is kind of based on the manufacturers, here's the best-selling China first half in 2020, leading by the OEMs there. BYD comes out, 60,000 vehicles. Tesla, remember, this is one half of 2020, so let's just double that, and that's with no growth, just staying at pace. So 120,000, Tesla at 50,000, VW Group at 29,000, SAIC, GM, GAC, BAIC, BMW, and then NIO comes in. There are some different companies I think they're going to really start to play into this, including XPeng and some of those, because I think they're ramping up very quickly. So China's going to have quite a bit of a different landscape of top-selling vehicles in the EV space, I think, in 2021. If you look at the best in Europe, Renault, of course, was number one. Tesla Model 3 came in at number 2. Volkswagen, their ID3. Then you get the Kona EV out of Hyundai, the Audi e-tron, Volkswagen e-Golf, the Nissan Leaf, and then you get into some of the, kind of the basement dwellers, I like to call them. They're just not interesting enough to really kind of break into that top level of the market. So you can kind of see this market is spread pretty varied and wide right now. So we need a lot more manufacturers on the ground in terms of offering these EVs. Now, so what we did was we took some data out of our Rever labs and also through our Speech IQ program, which essentially gives us a lot of data that tells us what kind of sentiment and language is being used around certain kinds of vehicles. So, and we've plugged in, I don't know, at last check, we were at over 100 different EV models that we had in our data model that was basically looking at. So what I wanted to do was look at kind of a breakdown of what I think are the vehicles that are going to have the most impact in terms of numbers. Numbers in terms of sales. Sales means adoption, okay? So let's just jump to this slide. Tesla Y is the big one, Tesla Model 3, the Ford Mach-E, the VW ID4, the Hyundai Ioniq, and then of course the Kia EV6. Those are the ones we're looking at. Here's the breakdown. And if you look at December, this is December through March of really looking at the digital conversation analysis on intent to buy. These are people talking about it on a variety of digital platforms, social media, et cetera. And if you kind of look at it, Tesla Model Y leading the pack in December, Model 3 clearly leaders. This showed up in Q1 for Tesla's deliveries, and it continues to take the pace and continues to kind of dominate all the way through March. February was a little soft, though, which was a little bit different, but we did see some drops, I think, there when you look at the Ford Mach-E, really ramping up in terms of sales and also manufacturing, and then also the VW ID4 plan to get their vehicle on the ground. Of course, they sold out the ID4 available, what the available inventory was. So there's a lot here happening. If you kind of create a compounded chart against this kind of traffic in terms of just digital conversations, remember this is a fraction of what the demand market is, it could really get interesting. When you look at March 2021, right here, it gets really, really interesting because we're seeing the early signs of both the Hyundai and the Kia starting to show up in this classification or this sector of vehicles, which are all kind of competing for that mid-size family vehicle, whether you're a sedan or you're looking for the vehicle that can be more of a crossover or a hatchback. This gets really interesting. I was impressed by Ford's movement, and their conversations in March really ramped up. And of course, the Hyundai and the Kia are almost neck and neck, but that also kind of shows in Korea, literally by the number of sales that both those vehicles had. I mean, they were within 1,000, I think, of each other. The EV6 in 24 hours dropped 21,000 orders in Korea, which was pretty impressive. And I think the Hyundai Ioniq was just slightly higher. So I could see how they are going neck and neck with this. Now, let's talk about why adoption could be slower. And this is the factor that I'm looking at. And this is just, as of today, going in and trying to get some of these cars that are making a real dent in the consumer's mindset of, should I buy an EV? If I want to go buy an EV in the ID4 range, right now, the first edition, it's sold out. That's the $43,900, $44,000 vehicle. Nationwide, this is Q1, but I can't even get it off the VW site. The other one that they've got here, which is the ID4 Pro, comes in at $39,000. This one says it's summer 21. I can order that one right now. Question is going to be, what is the overall availability in terms of their productivity and production capabilities for being able to land that here in the US. The other thing that I'm really concerned about is Tesla in terms of delivering vehicles. Right now, Model 3 is 9 to 13 weeks, and Model S is setting out at 10 to 14 weeks right now. That's as of early April. That's a 3-month zone of a vehicle that you have to wait on for vehicles and vehicle owners who need to get a car now, or maybe they have a lease ending. Listen up, guys. If you are looking at getting into an EV, you need to start planning your lease probably about a year in advance in a lot of these vehicles. Either one, we are going to continue to see a very fast adoption rate, or we could potentially see a slow curbing of adoption because people will get a little bit disheartened based on availability. And an automobile is still one of those love affairs with Americans. We love our cars. And if you don't have it available, it's one of the most disappointing things. If you've ever had to go out and get a different car that you really didn't want, I've had to do that, and 8 months later you sell it. But the point is that it does and could really kind of cause a little bit of a frump in vehicle demand in terms of EVs. Let's jump into our EV sales forecast for Tesla and kind of where this could go and how this might work against the overall capacity of the entire industry. So if you look at Q1, 2, 3, and 4, as I said, these were numbers that we were trying to get up to around 1 million vehicles. We played with a lot of different numbers and performance in these quarters to get up to 1 million. We struggled to get to that million number until we see some factors that could come into play in the last quarter. So you can kind of see our assignment there of doubling our numbers from 498,000. But let's look at the total global light vehicle EV category at 60, or the total global light vehicle market. These are in millions at 65.5 million vehicles. EV penetration as of 2019 was basically less than 1%. This was limited production and slow innovation in 2019. We jumped dramatically in 2020 from 76.5 million vehicles globally to a 4.1% market penetration, which these were numbers that sold in 2020 of 3.1 total EVs. Our estimate, based on this growth and also some of the struggles that we'll see with availability in 2021, we think that we'll slightly lift. But remember, the market is growing very fast on total vehicle deliveries overall. So we'll see a movement there of 83.4. These are estimates coming in from a variety of sources. 83.4 million cars for 2021. This is overall vehicles. We think we'll lift a little bit in EV penetration at 4.2, even though it is considerably more because of the growth in the overall market. That'll set in EV sales somewhere around 3.5 million. If we get 3.5 million EVs on the road this year, this is where the breakout could happen. And this is where Tesla kind of dominates, and their availability of vehicles right now is probably what's going to lead the way for them to control most of the market share at 27% for one single brand. China EVs, we estimate at around 46%. This will include all of the Chinese makers. The legacy US, very small percent, GM and Ford mostly leading the way if they can get to 100,000 vehicles. Legacy Asia, this will be the Kia and the Hyundai startups and a lot of the other ramp-ups that we'll probably see with both Toyota and also even Nissan to a certain extent. That will get us to about 11%, and then legacy Euro around 9% at 315,000 with a variety of different vehicles. Obviously, the Renault Peugeot lineup there. This will hit us at around 2% off the total score there to reach the 3.5 million vehicles overall from an EV standpoint. It'll be interesting to see how all this kind of lines out. I think the big questions when you look at the overall marketplace, you have to look at Tesla as basically the global leader right now, obviously. The big scenario here is whether or not they can keep pace with demand before the players start to move into the market space. This is why I think we will see some scenarios come into play where it could soften Tesla's demand if they don't strategically drop things in here. So let's take a look at big questions. Can they make up the demand need in time to save or take advantage of Q3 and 4 for this year? How will we see, and will we see early access to the Cybertruck? Also, how's China going to scale with BYD and XPeng right there on its tail in terms of China, Tesla China, with BYD and XPeng really moving quickly? And then how quickly will VW make its move into releasing a lot more production into the US? Because I think that's going to be a big factor. And then the status of really kind of Austin and Berlin. You've got photos right there. I was kind of surprised at how slow Austin was coming along. This is as of March 20th. This year, which is Austin. As you can see, there's no infrastructure around the vehicles yet, still a lot yet to do. And then there's Berlin, Austin and Berlin. There's Berlin on the left. As you can see, same kind of condition, just not a lot of infrastructure. They've got a long way to go. Can we move this in 30 days to 60 days before we see vehicles coming off the line? I think we might be in the latter half or early Q3 before we see vehicles coming off Austin and Berlin. Let's go into stock predictions because that's kind of what you've been waiting for. Tesla, of course, trading today at a pretty high rate. They were crossing over 700. As of the time we're filming this, are probably above that. Here we are at around 698 for a share, up quite a bit with the news of Q1. So this might be the catalyst that really starts to move the Tesla stock back up to where we've seen the highs of almost $900 this year, or actually it did hit $900.39. Let's go into my predictions. And this is the prediction for a bull case on Tesla moving to a $2,000 stock price by early 2021, January 2021, because we'll need the Q4 numbers to see an acceleration in this. And if you look at all these indicators that help us, obviously the first one was the Q1 deliveries. They smash estimates. So in April, we could see an $800 stock price. It'll be interesting to see if Tesla can hold that. The other thing I think that will start to factor in is when FSD subscriptions release. That'll be a big push. It may not be a big push for the beginning because I think it will still be new and people will need a little bit of that viral approach. A lot of people using it, putting up YouTubes, talking about it at local events, people playing with it, all those kind of things. So I think that's going to be a factor. And then I think they will over-index in Q2 on deliveries, which I think will give us the next bump in the stock price, which will happen somewhere around June. The Model S and X ramp, I feel like that's going to really start to help the stock continue to move in July. And then Gig Berlin, I believe, comes online. If that comes online in June and July, we will have a massive move toward more sales coming up for Q3 and 4. So I think the stock will start to see a very good, steady movement with Giga Austin coming on in September. And that'll be the question. Now you roll into Q3, they'll blow out their numbers in Q3 because of Giga Berlin, Austin, and China. To help lead the way. Austin will start getting its first vehicles on the ground, and I think that puts us up over $1,600 a share, which will be around mid-October is my estimate. And now, really kind of moving on to the Cybertruck. If they can give us an early release, will it give us a massive bump? It could, but I think the big one for the year end is going to be an FSD adoption bump. And what I mean by that is that now we've got FSD on the ground, and it's been out there long enough. I think we're going to see this as a Christmas present for a lot of people who own these vehicles and or are looking at trying to buy an EV. Tesla will have now put a lot of vehicles in FSD mode, and it will change the dynamic of how Teslas are viewed in terms of sales. Q4 will be the quarter that will determine whether or not Tesla can hit a strike price of over $2,000. And I think that is going to happen with a massive blowout in Q4 sales. Elon will push hard, maybe to hit that million number. And if they do, if they hit the million number, when you see a doubling of vehicle sales like what we've seen with Tesla, valuations are rewarded by the bucket loads on Wall Street in terms of companies who are doubling in size. And that is where Tesla is going to be. So there you have it. My estimates are moving out to early 2022, hitting the 2,000 mark. I know some of you bulls out there think the Tesla price should already be at $2,500. Listen, I understand. I completely, to a certain extent, agree with you, but I am a little bit skeptic on whether or not they can continue to meet all of these critical deadlines. The amount of things that are piling up on Tesla right now in terms of meeting, you could look at it two ways. You could look at it as this is a great opportunity because Tesla's going to have just win after win after win, or you could say we're going to miss some of these, and if we do, Wall Street will penalize us and punish us for that. So that's kind of the thing I'm watching very closely. I'm going to look back on this in a few months and see just how right or wrong I was. Make sure, of course, if you're listening in on the podcast, get us over on iTunes or Spotify. Leave us a rating. It's the best way to reach out and let us know what you love and like about the show. If you're checking us out on YouTube, make sure and subscribe and hit the bell because that's the way you're going to get great content like this. Hit me up on Twitter at Paul Barron. And of course, don't forget, check us out at techpath.show, our website that covers all things around the show of TechPath. And of course, if you have an idea, it's basically producer@revernetworks.com. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.